Resources are shared, and life in isolation is a death sentence. For those of you who may not be familiar with them, those are words of fiction from someone who I would call a prophet, the author Becky Chambers. Highly recommend. I think I've read everything they've ever written at least 4 or 5 times. They're amazing. And those words are from a story called To Be Taught If Fortunate. Some of you may recognize those words, to be taught if fortunate. But those are the words from 1977, the 1977 UN address, sending out a message into the universe, in which we said that we sent our words out, and if those words found other beings, that we would learn if we could, that we would teach if we were invited, and that we would connect. And in this story, To Be Taught If Fortunate, Chambers is telling of a time when people realized that the space race was not actually one that could have a winner. That greed and corporate profit were only going to help us. We're only going to help us hurt each other. And so, when the corporations and the governments decided that space was not profitable enough, the citizens came together and they gave a little bit here and a little bit there, a lot here and a lot there. But in the passage that you heard in the reading, one of the protagonists of the story is moving through a tunnel, through a section of an exhibit in which every person who had ever contributed to support scientific exploration had their name. The founders, the original 12, who had contributed millions and millions, their names were in just the same size and font as everyone else. But everyone had come together to explore. Now, I won't tell you what happens at the end of the book, but I suggest you read it. But through the course of the story, the explorers who are on this ship are forced to confront the fact that perhaps their motives were not as pure as they were sent out believing. They're forced to confront the fact that perhaps none of our motives are as pure as we went out believing. They were forced to confront the fact that their world was not what they had went out believing. And doesn't that just describe where we are right now? For those of us who believe in freedom, who believe in creating a world of justice, maybe it's never felt further away. I've heard more than one person say that in the last month, in the last 6 months, in the last 6 years. It's never felt further away. And I remembered, looking back into my childhood, I grew up in a military family. And my father was a soldier, my mother was a soldier. And so I grew up with lots of interesting anecdotes in life. that are perhaps not part of everyone's upbringing. And one of them was SNAFU. Now, I didn't recognize for quite some time that it was an acronym, because I first learned it when I was about 6. So, I didn't learn later until that it was an acronym for Situation Normal, All Effed Up. And I was thinking, because I do curse from the pulpit sometimes, but not always. And so I was thinking about that effed up part. And thinking about all of the F's that we are experiencing right now. Now, you might be thinking of a particular effed up that it feels like we are right now. But I'd like us to explore some of the other F's. Fed up. I know I've certainly been feeling fed up. Fed up with promises not kept. Fed up with people who, for whatever reason, can't seem to understand that we are all bound together. That root system that we heard about in the reading. We are not individual trees. We are not individual plants. We are not individual breaths. But somehow, some people can't see that. Somehow, some days, I can't see that. So fed up, yes, I've felt fed up. And on the days in which we give in to despair, sometimes fed up is all that we can feel. Fired up, another F. Fired up in our work, fired up perhaps in our actions, fires all around us, both physical and metaphorical. How can we help but to feel fired up, to feel fed up, to feel, in the immortal words, sick and tired of being sick and tired? Fannie Lou Hamer. Because it is not just us who are sick and tired of being sick and tired, but our world, our society, our civilization, our earth, sick and tired. And those are the pieces that, I don't know about you, but those are the pieces that I have been hearing most often. I'm fired up by what's happening. I'm fed up with where we are. I want to forget. Yet another news cycle, yet another killing, yet another group of children cowering in closets because school isn't safe. I want to forget. And those words, those are on the hard days. But those aren't the only F's that we may be feeling. Because we are not just fed up, but we are also fed by the planet, by each other, by the possibility that is before us. No, there's not a guarantee. No, there's not a certainty. No, there's not an everlasting news cycle full of stars and roses and rainbows. I'm not going to lie, I wish there were. At least every so often, maybe on a Friday. But that is not all there is. The hard news days are not everything. And the hard news days, even when they are everything that we can see, are not all there will ever be. I remind myself a lot these days about the long arc of the universe. We heard the arc that bends toward justice, right? And I don't know about you, but I heard the bend part. Yes, the arc bends toward justice. We see it. There's changes happening. There's progress happening. The arc is bending toward justice. But sometimes we have forgotten about the other part, the long arc. And the work does not stop being worthy just because it feels endless. Just because it is endless. My ex and I had a long-running discussion when we were married about questions. Now, he thought that one day we would come to the end of the questions. He thought science has so much potential, so much possibility, and one day we're going to figure it all out. And I thought that I had never heard the idea of anything more sad, that one day we would have no more questions. Because I think that curiosity is one of the most exciting things that is possible. And I think that possibility is one of the things that is most curious. The long arc of justice is exhausting sometimes to experience the long arc. But also, we will always have more to change. We will always have more to explore. We will always have more to hope for. We will always have more ways to commit to each other, more ways to commit to the future, more ways to choose each other, more ways to choose each other. And that is freeing to me, because we don't have to get it all right now. Yes, it would be good if we could get some of it right now. But perfection has never been required of any of us. And I will still not tell you the end of it, but I will tell you a little bit about what those explorers discovered. And that is that it did not matter. Now, on the hopeless days, they felt like it did not matter was a death knell. We came out here believing, and it didn't matter. But on the other days, on the better days, on the days where they remembered why they came, it didn't matter. It didn't matter that their motivations weren't perfect. It didn't matter that the reasons they had been sent out for others weren't perfect. It didn't even matter if they never accomplished what they thought they were going to accomplish. Because they were doing it. They were doing it for each other. They were doing it with each other. They were doing it to choose each other. And so that gives us an opportunity, a chance, a potential not just of looking ahead for freedom. Our minds are not stayed on one day freedom. Our minds are stayed on freedom now. Freedom is not a goal. Freedom is a point that we are traveling towards and through. We are fed by freedom today just as much as we collectively will be fed by freedom one day. Because it is in the choosing that we feed ourselves, and it is in the choosing that we feed each other. And I will say that one of the final F's is the one that you were thinking of and its cousins. Because we can say all of the wonderful, highfalutin words, but some days we need some French. And that's okay too. And that is wonderful too. And that is freedom as well. And that is choosing. Because sometimes what we need in order to continue to stay on freedom is to be able to swear a blue streak and then choose again each other. When people have been through a shared experience of trauma, which we collectively as humanity, as the earth, as people who are living in the now have, it can either drive them apart or bring them together. And that is a choice that we get to make anew every day, every moment sometimes. We name our individual and collective traumas of slavery, of genocide, of erasure, of systemic oppression, of ableism and classism and transphobia, and all of the other forms of oppression and oppressing that we carry in our heritage and ourselves. And then we choose again. Choose each other and ourselves, because trauma is not the only way we are linked. Our universe was born in fire. We were born in water and pain. We are sustained by air and earth. We, too, are star stuff. We can claim the power of our heritage to become believers in whatever it is that you believe. Believers in each other, believers in the holy, believers in what will be, believers in refinement, in the fire of our anger and the tempering of our love. We can believe in each other and ourselves and in hope, not the kind of hope that people talk about with bows and rainbows. And don't get me wrong, I'm here for bows and rainbows, but that's not how hope works. Hope is a little more battered than that, a little more bruised than that. Hope is the choosing again, even though. So, our freedom is tied up in our connection to each other, our hopes that we hold, and the commitments that we make to each other and to the freedom of the future and the freedom of the now. Some of you, perhaps many of you, may have heard the prayer known as the Lord's Prayer. And I would like to offer you another version, another idea of how we can choose together. Wordless action, silent potency. Where senses awaken, there heaven comes. We all look elsewhere for this light. It draws us out of ourselves, but the name always lives within. Create a reign of unity now through our fiery hearts and willing hands. Help us love beyond our ideals and sprout acts of compassion for all creatures. Help us fulfill what lies within the circle of our lives. Each day we ask no more, no less. Lighten our load of secret debts as we relieve others of their need to repay. Don't let surface things delude us, but free us from what holds us back from our true purpose. Again and again, from each universal gathering of creatures, nations, planets, time and space, to the next. Amen. And may we each choose. May it be so.